Information contained on the following program off the record does not constitute specific legal advice for any real case. Off the record is presented for entertainment and general information only. Listeners are advised to consult an attorney for their specific legal questions and guidance, and not to rely solely on information presented on this or any other law program.
It's time to go off the record. Need insight on how the law works? You found the right place. Legal questions, you've found answers. Thanks for joining us. Off the record. Here's attorney Julie Jordan de Palma.
Well, happy weekend, everybody. Happy Passover, happy Easter for those celebrating. It's nice to be back with you. I had a couple weekends off where we had some repeated shows while I took a little tour with family down to Florida to see some family members, and then to Providence, Rhode Island. And for any hockey fans who might be listening, a little jaunt to Providence to see the Providence Bruins, who happen to be the farm club for the Boston Bruins. And I do believe that when I got married, there was something in that arrangement that meant that I had to be a Boston Bruins fan to stay in the house, which has now trickled down to the children. So we all dutifully wore our Boston Bruins gear and went and cheered accordingly.
And I'm sure that at least the adults in your house can quote every line from Slapshot.
Yes, indeed. And my 14-year-old son is a close second to that. So we're doing well. We're passing it on.
A little bit of language in that film for a 14-year-old.
A little bit.
A few sexual situations.
Nothing he hasn't heard before from classmates. Sadly enough, we're at that stage. So as long as you filter it out, you're not bringing that out into public.
Well, all right.
It's a rite of passage in the house.
We were talking about movies before we went on the air. That's one of my favorites, too. There's so many favorite movies.
Yeah, we could have a whole show on that.
Indeed. So what are we talking about legally this week?
So legally this week, there is an article that came out in NPR and some information. There's been news stories back and forth on this, but today what we're going to talk about is the concept of advanced directives.
What's NPR?
NPR, I know. Shh. I wasn't listening. I saw an article online.
Somebody told you.
Somebody told me about something on NPR. And we're going to talk about advanced directives. We're going to talk about healthcare proxies. We're going to talk about MOLST forms and what that stands for. And if we can have time and we can get that far, we're going to talk a little bit about power of attorneys as well. But the point is we're going to talk a little bit about the legality, the ethics a little bit on end-of-life decisions. Caring for the incapacitated, making your wishes known to family members and or agents, and how to do that appropriately. How to begin to think about things we don't all often want to think about or think about at all, but we do want to make sure that our wishes are honored when we get to the end of our life, and to be comfortable and pain-free, and to, for many people, take that burden off of a spouse or children or family members so that they don't have to make those types of decisions without some guidance. So what came out this week in an NPR article, but what came out from an agency called New York End-of-Life Choices, is something that is being described as a, quote, aggressive advance directive. So for our listeners who are out there, an advance directive is something where you give guidance to care providers and to those around you what your end-of-life wishes are specifically. For example, do not resuscitate, nutrition, hydration, etc. So New York End-of-Life Choices has proposed, and their board adopted, a form that can be used for those who have advanced dementia. And that's what sets this apart a little bit. So their aggressive advance directive gives two options, an option A and an option B. And why it is interesting is because it permits halting food and water in severe dementia cases. So what does that mean, and why is that interesting? The New York public health law defines what healthcare is. What does that mean? When you look at the public health law section, it talks about providing nutrition and hydration orally without reliance on medical treatment is not considered healthcare. So why is that important? It's important because healthcare proxies cover decisions related to healthcare. Living wills, advance directives, talk about nutrition and hydration in them, but dementia is not one of the conditions that is generally taken into account when those forms are used. And as we learn more about dementia, as more and more of us have personal experiences with family members with dementia and seeing how that disease progresses, I think that there is a new, not a new fear, but there is more information, more exposure to it so that people want to try to avoid having an end of life that looks like that or can look like that. So this essentially is an advance directive that provides patients a way to hasten their death in late-stage dementia. It can.
Immediately, I see an issue cropping up here, and that is the somewhat elastic definition of dementia. It's a big tent, a lot of things underneath there.
Well, there is an elastic definition of dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinsonian-like neurodegenerative disorders that can start to blend into what those conditions look like or can look like. How do you pinpoint that? So you are, and that's why I like working with you, Bob. You start to pull out what we can talk about as we're here. So one of the issues is the elastic nature of definitions generally, right? And I'm an attorney, and what do? We focus on words and how we use words and how we put them together and what they mean, and the courts begin to do that as well. So there's elastic definitions of dementia. There's elastic definitions of nutrition and hydration. There are elastic definitions of what your wishes really are, and how do we have some reasonable certainty.
Who said words? Words are slippery things. Who said that?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So this also opens the door to a host of other things, right? Which is physician-assisted suicide, end of life, and if you can hasten your death. So there are only 7 U.S. jurisdictions currently that allow medical aid in dying, physician-assisted suicide, and they are Oregon, Washington, Vermont, California, Montana, Colorado, Washington, D.C. So what is interesting about this new aggressive advance directive is how are courts going to interpret it? How is it going to be used, and will it hold up? So this organization and its board have looked at it carefully. Their mission, if you look them up, is to try to obviously help people maintain their dignity at the end of their life, remain comfortable, honor their wishes for how they want to die and when they want to die. And so they've done a lot of work to try to figure out what is the best way that this may hold up. And so this is their proposal. What's interesting about it is, although this is a national issue and it's a New York State organization, the article quotes and talks with a Dr. Timothy Quill, who happens to be a palliative care specialist right here at the University of Rochester, who also happens to be an advocate for medical aid in dying. And he talks a bit about why he supports this, why he's been an advocate for this so long.
You want to tell them what palliative means?
Palliative care, for those listening, is really comfort care. When you are
at
the end of your life,
pain, isn't it?
Treatment of pain, making sure that as you are dying, you are comfortable, that you don't have to die in fear. It's both pain management, but it's also anxiety and those types of things that can come along as you're passing away. So the interesting piece of this advance directive is that the options are only supposed to be invoked when a patient is diagnosed with moderate or severe dementia. So what does that mean, to your point of what's the definition of that and how will we figure it out? There is something out there that medical providers use. It's called the Functional Assessment Staging Tool, or FAST. It has different stages to it. And the aggressive advance directive that's proposed says that it should not be put into use until someone is at either stage 6 or 7 of that FAST scale staging tool. So what does that mean? Essentially, in its simplest form, that would mean that someone is unable to feed themselves or to make healthcare decisions. So again, why is this newsworthy? Why does this become important? If your wishes are on artificial hydration, nutrition, are not reasonably known and can't, with, quote, reasonable diligence, be ascertained, then your agent, who is that? That's your healthcare proxy. If you don't have a healthcare proxy, the law will say that that is someone close to you or a family member, spouse, people like that. Your agent can't make those decisions for you. So that's why So that's why it's important that you either have a living will, that you have a healthcare proxy, if you are concerned about dementia, if you choose to fill one of these forms out as well, this aggressive advance directive relating to dementia, because some of these things are decisions that the medical providers will begin to make on your behalf if you don't have an agent who knows your wishes and can exercise those wishes for you. So again, this directive now has two options. Option A would allow you to refuse any oral assisted feeding of any kind so sometimes people think of feeding tubes, things like this. This is more akin to hand feeding, hand oral feeding. Someone who sees that your mouth is open, it looks like you may be willing to eat or want food, and so continues to feed you. You can say no to that. It's not just the artificial nutrition. It is, in fact, for example, family members or providers. That's why this is slightly different. So that would be option A. Option B would permit comfort-focused feeding, which would be a little bit different. And that would be more akin, I think, to what people think of at end of life dying, those things that are needed to make sure that you remain comfortable. And so what is interesting in this to me is I do a lot of nursing home neglect and abuse work, and akin to that, I meet many families who have family members with dementia and end-stage dementia. And one of the things that I notice as I talk with families or I read through medical records, I'm deciding to represent people or not represent them, is that there is a lot of confusion about feeding, particularly at end of life. Oftentimes, I think it stems from a lack of communication and education of families. So, for example, families are often at bedside at end-of-life stages, particularly with dementia, and they are very worried, concerned, and guilt-ridden that their family member is hungry or uncomfortable or unable to participate in the things that they once enjoyed, meals with family. And so they try to feed their loved one. And I have seen many times where it creates this clash, a lot of times between the medical providers and the family, where the family really wants the person to eat, really wants to feed them, and medical providers are saying, no, you can't. And why? People aren't really educated to know that at the very end of life, it's not comfortable.
Well, they can't swallow lots of times.
Well, that's right. In the basic physical sense, a lot of times when you get to the end stage of dementia, you lose your capacity to swallow.
Yeah, you'll see in nursing homes, you'll see them thickening fluids.
Thickening fluids, thickening liquids, changing diets. And families sometimes ignore that or want to ignore that, not realizing that, in fact, it's not comfortable and it's not helpful. Now, from a medical and more scientific perspective, this advance directive is interesting to me because I wonder in what context it would be used. So one of the things the advance directive talks about is we want to be able to resist handheld oral feeding at the very end stages of dementia. Why that's interesting to me is because in my mind, I'm thinking about people who are either in facilities or who would have hospice or some type of nursing available to them at that point. And often when you get to such an end stage of dementia, it is dangerous for the person to eat. So exactly to your point, you get to a point where the person should not be having solid foods. They're having pureed foods, or they're only having thickened liquids, or only with supervision, because there's a very real risk of aspiration and choking. So I'm curious how some of these things may not already be in place, such that oral feeding really wouldn't be appropriate anyway. There would likely be an order saying you can't do that.
I was going to say, there has to be some kind of a regimen in the care facility.
Well, that's right. There would have to be evaluations and swallowing evaluations done. So it raises a question of the timeline of when this would be used, and we can carry that conversation on after the break.
Off the Record with Julie Jordan DePalma, attorney, will continue in just a moment on WYSL 92.1 FM and 1040 AM.
For 50
56 years, it's been the late winter break, the early sign of spring that brings a smile to the face of every member of the family. Folks all over the Northeast wouldn't miss it. A visit to Cartwright's Maple Tree Inn, nestled in the forest outside Angelica, New York. If you haven't discovered this special destination, you don't know what you're missing. The Maple Tree Inn specializes in just one thing: buckwheat pancakes served family style and topped with the Cartwright family's signature maple syrup from thousands of taps in the maple grove right outside the restaurant. Eggs as you like them, maple milkshakes, and the Cartwright's own seasoned sausage are great accompaniments. The rustic setting and the scenic trip to the Maple Tree Inn are all part of the fun. Find out why families regularly make the trek from Rochester, Buffalo, all over the southern tier, even Canada, Germany, and Japan, just to experience this sweet treat. Cartwright's Maple Tree Inn. They're only open February 13th to April 15th. Call 585-567-8181. Get more information and driving directions at cartwrightsmapletreeinn.com.
At University Eye Specialists, I see many patients who suffer from dry, irritated, or itchy eyes. Sometimes these symptoms are often due to severe dry eye. Over-the-counter eye drops often help, but sometimes dry eye may require treatment with prescription medication. Dry eye is a very treatable medical condition that should be taken very seriously. The health of your eyes is very important to us. Please feel free to call any one of our local offices for an appointment.
In America, we are living longer, healthier lives. The longer we live, the more likely we are to develop eye conditions such as glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic eye disease. If you are over the age of 40, it's important to have a thorough eye examination in order to identify vision-threatening conditions at an early stage. At University Eye, we have the technology and experience to screen for and to treat glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic retinopathy. At University Eye, your vision is our mission.
Phone 1-800-724-0938.
Suffering a serious injury because of medical malpractice, nursing home neglect, dangerous conditions on property, or a car accident can make your life feel like it stands still. How will you provide for your family and overcome this loss? I'm Julie Jordan DePalma. I'm a trial attorney, but I'm also the daughter of someone who suffered a disabling injury. When you need someone to provide compassionate guidance to your family, but be a fearless advocate to your opponent, call the law offices of Jordan DePalma at 585-673-3053.
A healthy smile has general health benefits beyond just teeth. It's whole body wellness. Don't live with broken, missing, or failing teeth. Lakeview Dental can restore your smile with state-of-the-art dental care. And if you've been afraid to go to the dentist, those days are gone, thanks to safe, fear-free sedation dentistry. Find out more at livoniasmiles.com or call 346-3028. Lakeview Dental, for the smile of a healthier you.
You're listening to Off the Record with Julie Jordan DePalma on WYSL 92.1 FM and 240 AM.
So we're back together, and today we're talking about how do you make your medical wishes known if you are to be put in a position where you cannot make decisions for yourself, where you are terminally ill, or you are incapacitated because of a physical condition, either mentally, emotionally, physically, and you can't make your wishes known to others. How do you make sure that people have some sense of what you would like done for you with that care and treatment? We're starting out the show today with something that is newsworthy in that End of Life Choices New York has put forward by its board a proposed aggressive advance directive, which would allow those patients with advanced dementia to halt food and water at end of life.
This is a proposal now.
Well, this is a form that they are advocating people with a history of dementia or family members with dementia or who have been diagnosed with dementia to use this essentially as a supplement to the healthcare proxy, the New York State Living Will, to be more specific in the context of dementia, because dementia is not one of the conditions covered or thought to be covered by the New York State Living Will, do not resuscitate, etc. So again, why is this interesting or newsworthy? The first piece is because it's really focusing in on patients who have advanced dementia. Secondly, it is newsworthy and interesting because it focuses on the issue and options for feeding. So again, two options with this form. One option is to request comfort feeding. What does that mean? It's providing oral food and water if the patient appears to enjoy or allows it during the final stages of the disease. The other option is to halt all assisted eating and drinking, even if the patient seems willing to accept it.
So it's one or the other.
That is more if someone is trying to spoon feed you, hand feeding versus what some people may be thinking of, which is the use of feeding tubes. Now, this is interesting because the question is going to become, are the courts in New York State going to accept this? Are they going to look at this and allow this to stand up? And that's not clear. This isn't something that, for example, that there are court cases on yet because it's too new. It's last week that the board approved this. Will there be court cases? Probably at some point this is going to get looked at.
Oh, yeah, as long as there's lawyers, there will be court cases.
That's right.
I just want to point that out.
What are you trying to say?
Well, listen, I have a JD, and, I wouldn't want to belong to a club that would have me as a member, as Groucho Marx used to say.
You said it, not me. Not me, for the record.
It's just me, folks.
That's for the record.
That's right. That's for the record. But I'm interested that this is a proposal. So is there a metric whereby this is going to be adopted by some regulatory body, and then it's going to get tested in court? Or?
Not at this point. I think the advocacy organization that is putting this out with its board has as its mission to advocate for patients, to help people make decisions when they or their family members are at the end of their life. This is one tool that they are suggesting families can use alongside the other tools that already exist, living wills, healthcare proxies, etc., at the end of life when someone has dementia. And so is there a way for this to get approved or put it before some body?
Yeah, would it be adopted by someone? It's
not my understanding that they're doing that or that that's being put forth right now.
Is this going to be promulgated in the form of some kind of a standard, like a professional standard then, or?
I don't know that that's going to happen either. I think that more practically what may happen is that people will choose to use these forms to make their wishes known, and that it would be more likely, for example, for someone to get into an end-of-life situation where a healthcare facility or doctor doesn't want to cooperate. And why not? Doctors have a duty to honor a patient's wishes, but they can refuse to honor those wishes if they either have medical or moral qualms about it. This one raises those kinds of issues because the reason it's aggressive is it is saying that a person with advanced dementia could consent to no nutrition or hydration by assisted means, handheld spoon feedings, for example, even if they appear to be willing or need it. And that's why it's aggressive. So it is reasonably possible that a doctor would say, for example, we are not so close to end of life that we should be stopping nutrition, hydration. That is really going to hasten a person's death, even before I would reasonably say that that is medically appropriate to do. And so I think that's where the conflict is going to come in, and that's where this aggressive advance directive can start to be interpreted more as a medical aid in dying and pushing the timeline back farther and allowing people to hasten their deaths in different ways that at this point they aren't really doing through the typical New York State living will. And that's what's going to raise questions. And so I think what would happen is you'd get into a scenario where an individual or a family was trying to use the document, make these wishes known. A doctor or a healthcare institution said, we can't cooperate with that. And now you end up in court trying to interpret what are the orders, what are the directives that are going to come out of this. And New York State's Court of Appeals, which is the highest court that we have in New York, has said that a person's wishes there has to essentially be clear and convincing evidence to be able to determine with some reasonable certainty what the person's wishes are. So this advocacy organization is saying this document certainly could be a way to show with reasonable certainty and quite specifically what your wishes are if you end up with advanced dementia. So
universally clear and convincing is the legal standard these days, pretty much?
Well, with the Court of Appeals, there is a case that came out, I think it's 1988, in regards to the Westchester County Medical Center, and I have the quote and I'll find it for you. But yes, that a person's wishes have to be known with some reasonable certainty before they can be honored. And that's the reason why people will recommend that you actually have a healthcare proxy where you name an agent, where you make your wishes somehow specifically known, that you choose to use a living will if that's your choice, to make some of those other more specific orders known and clear. And so that's how we start to get into some of the gray waters now with this advanced directive. And it's going to be interesting to see, and even the article said, again, credit to NPR for that article and their work on that this is a document that is more likely to be honored at home, whether that's with your own family or perhaps individuals that you are hiring privately to help in a palliative care setting or a hospice type setting where people can die at home. And part of the document does talk about a person's wishes to die at home rather than an institution if it is not an undue burden on their family. So it's going to be interesting to see how this document holds up, how this form holds up, and if it's honored or not honored. And it will also be interesting to see how it's used as we start to get more sophisticated and we have more gains in advanced dementia and Alzheimer's treatments as well. And we are starting to improve quality of life a little bit.
So the status of this now is, it seems to be prospective in the language. Has it been adopted yet? Is it in draft form?
It's not something that's going to be adopted. It's something that the board of this advocacy organization has
somewhere,
written.
Though, right?
You can get access to the form quite easily. You can go right on the internet and you could visit End of Life Choices New York. If you go to their website, you will be able to get the actual form, so that you can review it and read it and look at it with family members and review that language. And if you so choose, complete it and have it as part of your medical record, give it to your healthcare proxy, have that form available should you get to this point. So the form is created. It exists. You can begin using it if you so choose. You may want to consider, if you're somebody that already has a healthcare proxy, a New York State living will, you may choose to call your estate attorney or whoever you worked with to draft those documents to let them know that this is also something that you're interested in using and making sure that the right people have copies of it.
Say the name of it again. The aggressive.
They are calling it an aggressive advance directive. It's called the Advanced Directive for Receiving Oral Food and Fluids in Dementia. And if you go to endoflifechoicesny.org, you can read about the advanced directives. You can also get a copy of the form and review it and use it if you so choose.
Any reaction from the medical profession, the nursing profession, or the nursing home industry?
I haven't seen it yet. And again, this is quite new. This is something that was put out there by End of Life Choices New York and language reviewed by its board last week. So the NPR article just came out Friday.
It is new.
So it's very, very new. I personally have not yet seen a response by way of other medical providers or nursing home industry. I think it's probably too soon, but I would fully expect that we may begin to see some of the typical end-of-life or medical aid in dying ethical debates about whether it's appropriate to discriminate against people in advanced dementia with feeding and nutrition. I would believe that we're going to start to see that debate unfolding as this comes on people's radar more.
All right, Julie Jordan DePalma, what are we going to be talking about next?
We're going to move to the general healthcare proxy and the New York State living will after this, so that taking just that dementia diagnosis out of it, what are some of the basic documents you should consider when you are doing your estate planning, when you're thinking about your wills, and when you're thinking about the aging process in general. We're going to talk more generally about that when we come back.
Thanks for joining us for Off the Record with Julie Jordan DePalma. Get the podcast at WISL1040.com and listen anytime.
Insulation, It's a smart idea since it keeps wind from whistling right through your windows, summer heat from your attic from baking you alive, or cold floors in the winter from turning your toes blue. And maybe you know that Icynene foam insulation is the best smart idea since it gets into spaces other insulations can't touch. Icynene fills small openings and gaps in your walls and around windows and doors that add up to big heating and cooling savings, as much as 50%. But the experts at Birch Lumber and Building Supplies in Perry want to remind you, no matter how great the material, only proper installation assures you that your Icynene insulation will give you the ultimate in comfort and energy savings. You can always identify a Birch insulation customer, from their comfortable smile to the extra money they enjoy every day from utility savings. Don't trust your insulation project to any here today, gone tomorrow guy with a pickup truck and a sprayer. Call Birch Lumber and Building Supply, Washington Boulevard in Perry, 237-6128. Do it today and start saving.
Suffering a serious injury because of medical malpractice, nursing home neglect, dangerous conditions on property, or a car accident can make your life feel like it stands still. How will you provide for your family and overcome this loss? I'm Julie Jordan De Palma. I'm a trial attorney, but I'm also the daughter of someone who suffered a disabling injury. When you need someone to provide compassionate guidance to your family, but be a fearless advocate to your opponent, call the law offices of Jordan De Palma at 585-673-3053.
Eyes in Rochester is a full-service ophthalmology office, and we specialize in general ophthalmology, taking care of people from childhood to adult and seniors. We do general eye exams. We specialize in cataract surgery, corneal surgery, and disease, as well as LASIK surgery. We also have a full-service optical shop and contact lens fitting service.
Visit Eyes on Rochester at 1157 Fairport Road.
At Family Furniture in Perry, get everyday savings without big chain store hassles. Find out why Family Furniture is the shopping destination for thousands all over the region. Need a new mattress? Come in and try their all-new Echo Gel-infused memory foam, or the solid latex styles for the finest support and comfort available today. Instead of the big Rochester showrooms, shop Family Furniture in downtown Perry, serving you for over 65 years. Open Thursday and Friday nights till 7, Saturdays till 4.
At Finger Lakes Gaming and Racetrack, making you feel like a top dog is what we do. Try your luck on our 1,500 video gaming machines and enjoy Finger Lakes Gaming's award-winning Vineyard Buffet. Or watch your favorite team on the big screen at Remedy Bar and Lounge. Hey, when's the last time you felt like a top dog? Go fetch that feeling at Finger Lakes Gaming and Racetrack, Route 96 in Farmington. And check us out at fingerlakesgaming.com. Must be 18 to play video gaming machines.
We're keeping it legal with Julie Jordan De Palma on WYSL 92.1 FM and News Power 1040 AM.
So we're back together, and we're talking today about how to make your wishes known as you come to advanced age and end-of-life decision-making. And part of that process of planning, so many of us sit down and say to ourselves, we need a will, right? A lot of us know that much. We think about that, but we don't always think about the documents that go along with that, or that should go along with that, or at least be considered. And that is choosing your healthcare proxy in New York, choosing whether or not you want to do a New York living will. A lot of times if you meet with an attorney, sometimes they put those two pieces together for you in one document. So let's just talk generically today about what those things are. If you don't have them yet and you need to think about them or consider them, it's important to know what they're used for, when they work, when they don't work, because people oftentimes get healthcare proxies and living wills confused and further confused with things like a power of attorney. So a healthcare proxy in New York allows you to appoint trusted family member, friend, spouse, whomever you so choose, to make healthcare decisions if you lose the ability to make those decisions for yourself. You can decide how those wishes change as your medical condition changes. Hospitals, doctors, providers have to follow those proxies' directions as if they were your own. You can give that agent as little or as much authority as you would like. All medical decisions can be given over to that person, or only certain ones. And you can give very specific instructions to your proxy. It can also cover things like organ donation, if that's not already on your license, if you're not already registered as an organ donor. And the healthcare it covers, the definition of healthcare, is any treatment, service, or procedure to diagnose or treat your physical or mental condition. Now, interestingly enough, and this is why it's important to a little bit of our debate at the beginning of the hour, which is artificial nutrition and hydration, a proxy, cannot refuse or consent to those measures for you. That's why a healthcare proxy alone may not be enough if you also have those concerns in mind, in which case you should also be looking at the New York Living Will. What happens if you don't have a proxy and you are incapacitated and you cannot make decisions for yourself? The Family Healthcare Decisions Act was enacted in March of 2010. That allowed family members and others close to you the right to make those medical and life-sustaining decisions if you were physically or mentally incapacitated. It also created some opportunities for those same types of people to object to healthcare decisions being made. So what's good and what's bad about that? What's good is if you are incapacitated and you don't have a healthcare proxy, do healthcare providers have somebody they can turn to other than the courts or getting a guardian appointed for you if you're just physically incapacitated? Yes. Why is that important? Because it allows people to be making appropriate and timely medical decisions on your behalf. What's bad? Well, what's bad about that is if you don't have these things in writing, you haven't given your instructions to someone, you haven't made your wishes known clearly, then what is life-sustaining to one person may not be to another. What is reasonable care to one family member, brother, sister, spouse, may be totally unreasonable to someone else. Someone's view of how you are doing and if there is a reasonable recovery may be totally different than another family member's. And so what happens? We get the terrible, awful, emotional fights in the hallways where somebody thinks you're not being reasonable, let the person pass away, and someone else is saying, no, if we just do X, Y, and Z, maybe there's going to be a recovery.
Just imagine your own private little abortion debate going on within your family. When does life begin, kind of thing, and when should life end? I mean, these are extremely contentious situations potentially. And also, from your point of view, if you're the patient, just stop and think for a moment. Families, of course, are funny things sometimes. Think about some members of your family and whether you would want them to be making life and death decisions about your continued existence. That's if you think about it, that's got to give you pause.
I think it certainly does have to give you pause, and life is fleeting, right? Everything can change in an instant. So the person that you might have had a fight with 5 minutes ago may end up being the person close enough and on the phone that they can get to. Maybe the person you haven't talked to in a long time technically would be next of kin and available. And so it's important for you personally so you know your wishes are honored. But many times people also do it so that this exact type scenario doesn't develop, that you don't have family members fighting and being guilt-ridden over these decisions and no one knowing exactly quite what to do. Some people choose not to do a healthcare proxy, I think sometimes out of fear. They're worried that, well, if I do a healthcare proxy and I say it's my husband or my brother or my sister, whoever, that if something happens to me, they're going to step in and they're going to be the one making decisions. I'm sitting in the bed and I'm fine.
Are they going to off me at the earliest opportunity?
Right. Are they going to make decisions and I'm going to be standing there trying to object? And people are, reasonably afraid of that. But that's not how they work. So when does your healthcare proxy, if you have one, actually kick in? And it's not used until your medical providers determine that you are not able to make healthcare decisions for yourself. You are truly incapacitated. You are not able to speak your wishes.
Now, is that the time frame for that? Is that now or is that forever?
Well,
because people recover.
Right. So how often do you have to do a healthcare proxy, or how do they work? A healthcare proxy, the naming of your agent and writing down those wishes can be indefinite unless you choose otherwise. You can say this is only in effect for so much time. Problem with that is if you forget to fix that or re-up it. But certainly, again, it only comes into play if you can't make those decisions for yourself. You're not able to. For that period of time, your healthcare proxy is going to be able to make them. If you make a recovery and you are competent and you are able to make your decisions, it's back on you. So again, it's important to have them in place if you are able and ready to pick somebody to be that agent and make those wishes known. Again, you can tell your agent orally or in writing that you want to cancel it, that you don't want to use them anymore, that you want to use someone different. All I would say to that is, please make sure that those updated forms get where they belong. Where do they belong? With you in your wallet, with an attorney. If an attorney's helped you do that, put it with your will and your other important paperwork. With your agent, should have one. You should let your medical providers know, certainly with electronic medical records now. Oftentimes you'll be asked at annual visits and things like that. If you give it to a primary care, somebody...
Do you want to update your...
Right. They'll get it scanned in. They'll get it into Rochester, Rio, or any of the other organizations where everybody can see your medical records together. It's a smart thing to do. A nice part about the New York State Healthcare Proxy Form, you do not need a lawyer to help you complete it. You can go right online and right at the New York State Bar Association, get yourself a healthcare proxy form, fill it out with your agent, and get it in the right hands.
In many medical offices, they have them too.
They'll have them. They'll gladly offer them to you if you tell them that you need one and don't have one. And your only limitations in who can it be is it has to be an adult, so somebody 18 or over. Some people choose to use a doctor. What's important to know is if you pick a doctor, that doctor has to choose between either being your healthcare proxy or being your doctor. So that's an important distinction. Don't pick a doctor because you like how you're so impressed with their care and treatment, because ultimately they're going to have to choose to be the proxy or the doctor.
Because now they have an ethical conflict.
Right. Similarly, if you are a nursing home resident or in some type of facility or institution, there are also very specific rules about what employees or individuals linked with that facility can or can't do. So you'd want to look into that. Your spouse can obviously always be your agent. What's important to know, though, is if you are divorced or you become legally separated, that spouse can no longer serve as your healthcare proxy unless you write in specifically, yes, we are divorced, yes, we are legally separated, and I still want this person to serve as my proxy. So
that cancellation happens automatically by operation of law?
That cancellation would happen automatically unless you made a note on your form that, yes, you're acknowledging that you're legally separated or divorced, and this is still the person that you are choosing. So make sure that you do that if that's your situation. Sometimes people are leery to agree to become a healthcare proxy because they're concerned about, can I get in trouble? What if I make the wrong decision? And it's important for folks to also know that a healthcare proxy agent can't be sued for the healthcare decisions that they make in good faith.
No malpractice there, huh?
You're not going to get sued because you spoke with the doctors, you listened to all the information, you made an educated decision in good faith, and it happened to be wrong. Again, it has to be made in good faith. So if someone can prove that you had some ulterior motive, then that could be a problem. But most people obviously are trying to keep everybody's best interest in mind, and so you're not going to open yourself up to liability. The other thing that people get scared about is, what if I'm the healthcare proxy and this person can't pay their bills? Or the insurance doesn't come through, or there's some fight about the medical bills. Am I on the hook for the medical bills? No. Just because you are someone's healthcare proxy does not put you on the hook for their medical bills. So that shouldn't be something that holds anybody back from agreeing to do this.
Good idea to have the advice of counsel when you're doing this, though, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I think that these documents are
a lot of nuances here.
There are a lot of nuances to it, and again, there is a difference between a healthcare proxy and a living will. Healthcare proxy and living will are different than your actual will or estate planning. They are different than a power of attorney. Some attorneys have very specific viewpoints on whether you should exercise a living will or not, and may advise you to consider certain factors and whether you should have it or not have it. So, yes, I think that the smartest thing to do is to find an estate attorney that you trust and respect and like, and sit down and truly talk about planning in all forms, have all these documents together and reviewed, and educate yourself about which ones you want to have in place. Get them all in place, get them all together, have somebody who has all of these things for you. I think that's the smartest way to handle it.
And after the break, we're going to move on to some of those other forms.
We're going to move on to
Advanced
the
directives?
living will when we get back. And if we have a little bit of time, we'll talk about power of attorney.
All right. Julie Jordan De Palma, Esquire, on the record. See, I did it again. On WYSL 92.1 and 1040 AM.
It seems anyone can build a website these days using all sorts of free tools and services. But do those websites actually get results? And how do you even measure it? Nothing But Net Solutions knows there's so much more to an online presence today. Websites are just one piece of the puzzle. Search engine optimization, pay-per-click campaigns, email campaigns, social media, mobile readiness, and responsive design, plus analytics are all part of it. Nothing But Net Solutions will affordably simplify the choices for you, providing a wide range of internet development and marketing services, all under one umbrella. Customized to each situation, Nothing But Net Solutions will be there with you through every step, concerned about only one thing: results. 14 years in business and counting. That's what they really care about. Visit nbnsolutions.com or call 585-298-9510. That's 585-298-9510.
If you're looking to market and grow your business, make new business connections, and give back to the community in a meaningful way, consider joining the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're the largest suburban chamber in Monroe County, and we offer networking, education, marketing, insurance, and advocacy. You do not need to live or work in Greece to join. Our members come from throughout the region. In short, we're better together, and together, we're moving business forward. Visit greecechamber.org or call 585-227-7272 to join today.
Suffering a serious injury because of medical malpractice, nursing home neglect, dangerous conditions on property, or a car accident can make your life feel like it stands still. How will you provide for your family and overcome this loss? I'm Julie Jordan De Palma. I'm a trial attorney, but I'm also the daughter of someone who suffered a disabling injury. When you need someone to provide compassionate guidance to your family, but be a fearless advocate to your opponent, call the law offices of Jordan De Palma at 585-673-3053.
For breaking news,
right now, a police investigation is underway in this city.
Police are still working to determine exactly what happened here tonight.
For weather where you live.
A nice chance for some sunshine. Travel overnight into tomorrow will be challenging.
For investigative reports.
We're about to show you the most unique crime prevention story we've ever done.
Who's going to know more about breaking into homes than the people who actually did it?
Watch News 10 NBC. It's where WYSL listeners get their news. Julie Jordan De Palma's Off the Record on WYSL 92.1 FM and 1040 AM. Online at WYSL1040.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for listening. Today we're talking about how do you make your end-of-life decisions known? How do you pick an agent to make medical decisions for you if you happen to be incapacitated? So we talked about the healthcare proxy. We talked about a new aggressive advance directive through New York end-of-life choices for those with dementia. Now we're going to talk generically about the New York State Living Will, also called an advance directive. These are the things that can be put into place. These come into effect only if you have a terminal illness or you are at the end of your life and unable to speak for yourself. So before the break, we talked about the healthcare proxy. Healthcare proxy comes into effect when you are unable to make your wishes known. You are incapacitated in some way. That doesn't necessarily mean you're at the end of your life. The New York State Living Will comes into effect if, in fact, you have a terminal illness and you are at end of life. So you can put this into place, and candidly, you should put this into place along with the healthcare proxy if you have very specific wishes for things like CPR, mechanical respiration, the artificial nutrition and hydration that we talked about before, use of antibiotics at end of life. So this is the form that you would need in place if you have very specific wishes, and a lot of people do, what they want to happen if they really get to that point. The other thing you can do is these forms all have kind of an other section, other instructions, other things that you want to be known. And you can add into that section that, for example, any questions about how to apply your living will should be decided by your healthcare agent, your proxy. The New York State Living Will form also was developed by the New York State Attorney General. That form exists. You can have access to it even without an attorney. If you want to review the form and fill one out, you can get the form. You can do that. The only thing that's important is that you do need to have 2 witnesses who sign that form, who are there to acknowledge with you that, yes, in fact, these are your wishes and you made them known and this is what you picked. This is your signature, etc. So you're going to have to be in front of 2 witnesses for that. Why is this important? Again, it's important because earlier in the show I told you there was a Court of Appeals case. It's the highest court we have here in New York State. In 1988, there was a decision in regards to Westchester County Medical Center. And again, the Court of Appeals said that there had to be clear and convincing evidence of a patient's wishes. So that's why these documents are important to have in place and are filled out correctly. So now let's take the next step, which is something called a MOLST form. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, about 50 minutes ago.
Okay.
That's the first time ever. MOLST?
MOLST. What's it stand for? It stands for Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. These are things that hospitals, nursing homes, medical providers put in place after a series of conversations between the patient and or their health agent and a trained healthcare provider. The MOLST form is the only form approved in New York State to document hospital and non-hospital orders, which are different than your wishes, okay? So these provide the specific medical orders to be put into place if you are at end of life. And why is it important? Because you want to make sure that the MOLST form that is sitting in your medical record with a facility matches your actual wishes. So sometimes, for example, I see where people are not clear, where they sometimes take things for granted. They think that they make very clear during a discussion, yes, I want mom or dad or family member to be transferred to a hospital if they get an infection. Yes, I want you to give them antibiotics. But they don't specifically come right out and say that. And there is actually confusion because someone puts a DNR in place or says they don't want CPR or they don't want artificial nutrition and hydration. And then some of these other things become gray. So what I would say to people is be clear. Don't take things for granted. If you're having these conversations, spell it out explicitly. Have the conversation, put it on the table, say it. Look, I do want you to use antibiotics. Yes, I do want you to take this person to the hospital if we're talking about an infection. Even if I have said to you that I don't want you to resuscitate or I may not want you to intubate or use mechanical ventilation, I still want you to treat infection. I still want you to keep people comfortable. And I do think that that includes bringing them to the hospital. Those are the kinds of things that you want to make sure you say because providers can get confused and it can cause delays in treatment. So you need to be an advocate and you need to pay attention to these forms. And to your point earlier, Bob, is it important to have an attorney involved? It can be. You know, you need somebody to explain what these forms are to you.
I was going to say.
So you know how to use them and what you need.
There's a lot of moving parts here. And you think about the dynamics involved in end-of-life decisions and treatment options and so forth. There's a lot of different ways to go, and there's a lot of interplay between these directives. There's some overlap, and there's some gaps, and I wouldn't want to try to navigate this without knowing what you're doing.
Not only do you not want to be navigating this if you aren't educated about it and you don't know what you're doing, you do not want to be navigating this for yourself or for your family members when you are actually at the end of life.
In a time of duress.
And people are in duress, and people, as educated as they may be, as well-intentioned as they may be, can't think clearly because they're overwhelmed. And people are so overwhelmed by the number of decisions and the moving parts, they just don't know what to do. They can't focus, or they lose track of some of this.
Yeah, is MOLST something new as well?
MOLST isn't anything new. No, MOLST is not new. It
never heard of it.
is something that would be right in the front of a hospital chart, a nursing home chart that's required to be in there to know what these directives are and what the orders should be, so there isn't a delay in any kind of treatment. So again, make sure these things line up, make sure they match, make sure that you have the right things in place. And we're not going to have time today to talk about the power of attorney in New York, but what I do want to say along the lines of our discussion today is if you have a power of attorney in New York, you have the form filled out, you have chosen someone, they are acting as your power of attorney or can act. What's important to know is your power of attorney cannot make health decisions for you. There is a huge list of powers that you can give your power of attorney, but those healthcare decisions are not something that the power of attorney does. And what does that mean? It means even if you have a power of attorney, if you want that person or someone to be an agent for healthcare decisions, you need a healthcare proxy with someone named. So don't think that you have all the bases covered just because you have a power of attorney. You have a lot of bases covered, but you may not have them all covered. So again, this is all part of what I think ultimately will probably become a two-show series, shall we call it, where we talk about some of these planning stages, estate planning, end-of-life decision-making planning, and the documents that go along with that. So next show, we're going to try to talk more specifically about the power of attorney. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Article 81 guardianship that sometimes people need if someone is mentally incapacitated, unable to make decisions for themselves, that expand those powers even a little bit more, the context in which they're used, and we'll also talk a little bit about why it's important to have a will and start thinking about that while you are healthy and able to think about it. So all part of a series on getting life in order while you can for all those phases of aging.
Great. We have a couple minutes left in the show. Let's talk about your practice, the Julie Jordan DePalma Law. I guess you call it the DePalma Law Firm?
So
it
is the law offices of Jordan DePalma, which sometimes confuses people because they think my first name is Jordan, but that's actually my maiden name. In any event, I focus my practice on helping individuals, families who are catastrophically injured due to personal injuries. What does that mean? It's medical malpractice, it's nursing home neglect and abuse, car accidents, anything that can cause a life-changing, altering injury. In addition to that, a lot of times there is a little bit of this estate piece in it. Who is your power of attorney? Who is your healthcare proxy? Who can make decisions? Do you need a guardian at some point? Those things can come into play too, but I really focus mainly on those personal injuries. So that's what I do, and I'm happy to talk with people about that. I appreciate everybody listening, but for this next piece of the show, when we start to talk about the true estate planning and wills, we're going to get some folks in here who can really address that.
Oh, some guests
more
in studio.
specifically, some guests perhaps to really focus in on that for us and start to talk about how these pieces interrelate, where the gaps are, what the nuances are, what the recommendations are, and why it's important to do it.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to that here on WYSL 92.1 FM 1040 AM. Tell a friend about the program, by the way, and we appreciate your doing that, and give them some contact information.
If you're looking to talk with me, if you've got an idea for a show, please reach out at any time. The email address is jjd@jordandepalma.com, and DePalma is D-I. It's one of the things I have learned I need to tell people. If you want to reach out by phone with an idea for a show or a thought about the show, please always feel free to do that. The firm's number is 585-673-3053. I love to hear from all of you. Thanks for listening, and again, have a great weekend.
And we'll see you next time on Off the Record.